Hello, everybody. My name is Kristen. I'm the Director of Operations here at GMI. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's roundtable on how to handle being rejected by jobs or recruiters. We're going to spend about an hour discussing this topic. As a reminder, the call will be recorded and made available to everybody after. We're joined today by two repeat GMI mentors, Michelle and Peter, who will introduce themselves, share a bit about their career journey. Then we'll move into some questions that were submitted from our mentees for this topic. If throughout the meeting you have any questions, please feel free to type them in and we can address those at the end. Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Michelle Moltz. I am a third-time mentor with GMI, so I'm thrilled to be here. And I work in corporate communications.
Peter?
Awesome. Hi, my name is Peter. I'm also a three-time GMI mentor. I'm a project manager in the engineering space for engineering construction in the oil and gas industry, and excited to be here. Love mentoring new students and people looking to make career changes. So glad to be here.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing. We're going to move into the questions. The first question that we received was, what have your experiences with rejection been when applying for jobs? Michelle, would you like to go first?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think in terms of experience and rejection, I think it can happen at all stages of the search, right? There's been times I've applied for a position and I haven't been screened or anything, but I'll get an automated rejection back. There's other times where I might get rejected at various parts of the interview process. And it happened to me quite a bit when I was beginning my career after school, but also continues to happen throughout one's career as well. But I think that you'll find that although it will continue to happen, there's a lot you can learn from it. And in many cases, it doesn't end up being a negative experience in the long run either.
Peter?
Awesome. Yeah, to echo what Michelle said, I've also experienced a lot of rejections, particularly after a layoff. You do a lot of applications. My last round was about 180 applications, about 70 interviews, about 40 rejections, which I also monitor as well. Sometimes I got rejected within a couple of hours after submitting an application. Those are due to the applicant tracking systems and such. But like Michelle said, for me, rejection is it's a learning experience, and it helps you focus on things to improve. See how you can do better next time, but also not to take it personally because it's a competitive job market. And taking rejection personally means that you're probably maybe too involved in one particular position. We all need a job for sure, and we want that next job. But depending on how far you go, rejections are going to happen. It's just something you have to take on the chin and move on and go to the next application.
The next question we received is it normal to get a lot of job rejections when starting out? I think this is a pretty common feeling that a lot of our mentees have. Peter?
Yes, absolutely. So when you first start out, there's always the equation of, hey, we want you to have experience, but we also want you to be a young blood as well. And it's kind of like a chicken and the egg question. When you're first starting out, of course, rejections are going to be part of the norm, but the key, in my opinion, is to keep trying to go after the jobs that you want for the companies that you want to work with and the roles that you want to do. You're going to get rejected. Again, it's not something to take personally. They probably want more experience, but also they may want a particular personality fit with the company culture there. And sometimes, we can't all meet all cultures and all situations in a jobs situations. Sorry, I'm getting choked on my words here. But long story short, when you're first starting out, you just got to keep going after it. You get a rejection, say, okay, what can I do better next time, and go after it.
Michelle?
Yeah, my experience starting off was definitely a lot of rejections. What I kept in mind, though, is it only takes one. It only has to be one that ends up working out. And I also found that even there were some companies, especially larger companies, that maybe I was rejected the first time, but then would get further along in a process a next time as well. And even I'm positive that some companies I have worked at also had rejected me at least one of the first times I had applied.
Nice.
So now that we've covered to expect rejection in a sense, the next question was, should I respond to rejection notices? If so, how do you respond to recruiters, hiring managers who send the rejection notice? Michelle?
Yeah, and I don't know if there's one right answer on this one, to be honest, but from my experience, I would say if it's a case where I had applied and just simply received an automated rejection, and never spoke with anybody at the company, my inclination is I would not respond to that. Again, that wouldn't stop me from applying to other positions at the company, but wouldn't personally respond directly to that rejection. But in cases where I had either met with folks at a company or met with a recruiter, and really was interested in the role and the company, I think when you're getting rejected, it is an opportunity to thank them for consideration, reiterate what you were excited about, and remind them that if other opportunities in the future open up for which you might be a fit, that you'd really love to be considered. I've done that before.
Peter?
Yeah, so again, Michelle, I think I hit the nail on the head. For me, it depends on how far along in the process you are. So if you get rejected after a fourth round interview, I would write back and say, hey, what could I have done better? Here are my selling points, why you should have hired me. But if it's after the first round of interviews, you get a rejection, probably not. For me, the key is what outcome are you expecting? Because a lot of times if you get rejected, they're not going to turn around and say, okay, since you replied, we're going to hire you now. That's probably not going to happen. But that said, you can still keep bridges open, especially if it's gone to the later rounds of interviews. And like Michelle said, you might have a chance of getting hired later on by the company. So the key is to keep open communication in that regard.
Okay. And the next question is, how do you cope with rejection and still manage to stay motivated? Peter?
For me, the things that we fear is due to what we're unfamiliar with. And once after you've had a couple, 3, 4, 5 rejections, you begin to become desensitized to it. If you don't take it personally, if you don't feel like you're a bad person for not getting the job, you're going to be fine. And each rejection that comes, you get less and less sensitive to it. For me, to stay motivated is, okay, this rejection's occurred. There's nothing I can do about it. And I'm going to move on to the next job application, prepare for the next interview, research the next company. So the key for me is just keep moving forward.
Michelle?
I totally agree. So much of it is not taking it personally because so often it really isn't personal. And I know that's oftentimes easier said than done. I agree with Peter that you do over the years start to get more used to it, and that is very helpful. And I think whenever you can too, taking it as a learning experience, thinking about those things that, oh, maybe next time I might try this differently, answer this question differently, especially if you realize there might have been certain interview questions that you may think you could have responded to a different way, or certain skills they mentioned that you then realize, oh, I haven't developed those particular skills maybe as much as I could be doing. Look at it for the things to work on. But I would say try not to dwell on the rejection itself. Take it more as a learning opportunity, and yeah, keep the motivation to keep applying to other opportunities because you'll find yours. It just wasn't this one.
How do you use rejection to your advantage? So if you're receiving a lot of rejections, I know we've kind of covered don't let them get you down, but how can you kind of take that and use it to your advantage? Michelle?
Well, I think when you do get rejected, especially if you've been through several rounds, you can always ask for feedback. Companies may or may not give you the feedback, but if they do give you feedback, like that is really could be an opportunity to learn and tweak your approach to improve for the next time. So I think that's a way to take it and be positive. And also, I think sometimes too, rejection also allows you to think even more about what you want, because maybe you might have realized through the interview process that maybe mutually it wasn't a good fit. It's not always just they're rejecting you. So I think just keeping that in mind too, of just because really at the end you want to find the right fit. That's what it is, right? So again, if you were rejected, I like to believe it means I just wasn't the right fit, but my right fit is coming for me.
Peter?
Yeah, that's a great answer, Michelle. And I want to echo that as well. For me, an interview is often a two-way street for me. So when I'm being interviewed, I'm also interviewing them. Is this a company I want to work for? This is the kind of role I want to be in, and so on. And if they end up rejecting me, well, maybe I should say to myself, wow, I really didn't want that job that bad anyways. Or it was a good fit, but maybe not because of this aspect. But nevertheless, to me, it's a two-way street. So every interview that you go into, I would suggest that you keep it as a two-way street. Because remember, you're always interviewing them just as much as they are you. And then the second part is after a rejection, I would go back to the job description, review the notes of my interview, review my thank you letter, and say, okay, what could I have done better? What could I have addressed more? Where may have I failed? Did I fumble an answer or something like that? To me, these are, like Michelle said, learning experiences that you can basically improve your toolbox with for the next interview. So every opportunity that you get rejected is an opportunity to learn something new.
The last submitted question is kind of a two-parter. It goes hand in hand with rejection, but it's not like the outright rejection. It's more of the when you're kind of being ghosted. So in terms of unresponsive jobs or recruiters, if you submit an application and you don't hear about it, would you suggest that somebody follow up? And if so, how soon? Peter?
Yes. So if you don't hear something for a job that you really want to land, I would definitely follow up after a week or so, but not longer than that, because oftentimes there's a lot of applications and job descriptions and job openings that are just trying to get a feel for the market, see what candidates are looking like. And then the second part of that is if you get ghosted, it often is because there's a lot of candidates applying for jobs. Recruiters, corporate recruiters, they have so many emails per day, so many candidates, so many roles to fill. If you get ghosted, it means that the company wasn't interested in you for that particular role, but that shouldn't stop you from applying to that same company for a different role a little bit later on. But again, don't take the ghosting personally, because oftentimes there's just too much volume for a recruiter to deal with.
Michelle?
I would always say err on the side of following up if it's something you're interested in, because the worst case is they won't respond back to you. That's okay. But I would typically follow up. And was this asked more in the context of applying and not having interviewed?
Yeah, so the first
Yes.
part was if just submitting an application and
Just
you
an
don't hear.
application. I think if you happen to know someone at the company or able to see who the recruiter is or hiring manager might be, I think there's nothing wrong with sending a note. I wouldn't keep repeatedly following up then if they don't respond, but I think sending one note can totally work sometimes.
And then the other aspect of that question was if you go on an interview and then you don't hear up, should you follow up and how soon? Michelle?
Yes, I actually, and when I go on interviews too, I oftentimes at the end of the interview will ask about next steps or when should I expect to hear from you, and you can even say, when would you like me to follow up. So I would respect the time frame that they say. Like, again, you don't want to wait too long, as Peter was saying, but if they said, oh, it might be 2 weeks, then I would give them the 2 weeks. But typically speaking, if they don't give a time frame, I think a week is a totally fair timeline to follow back up, and I definitely do that myself.
Peter?
Absolutely. Yeah. For me, I always ask next steps because that's very important. Always ask about timelines. And then typically, if it's a job that I really want, I will send a thank you note right after the interview within an hour or two if I can, and just highlighting a few bullet points of why I think I'm a good candidate and a good fit for the role. But even then, if I don't hear something back after a week, I'll reach out and see what's going on. But beyond a week, I probably won't reach out because it means that you probably moved on, or a job has gone on hold, or some other thing may have happened. But yeah, after an interview, definitely figure out next steps and follow up if you really want the job.
We got one question just typed in, and it's what is your opinion on sending cold emails? I assume they mean in terms of reaching out to a company prior to applying, but do either of you have something in regards to that?
Michelle?
I say if you can find a name of a person to contact someone in your network or maybe connected to other folks in your network, I think sending a polite note introducing yourself and expressing your interest and letting them know you applied. My understanding from folks I've talked to who have done things like that is that sometimes it can work. Again, I think in those cases, especially if you don't know the person, I would probably just do that once and then, wait and see. And if they don't reply, I don't think that's a situation where I would continue following up. But I think it's a great idea, especially in a tight market, to help yourself stand out.
Peter?
Absolutely. I second that motion for sure. I've sent a couple of cold emails before, and I got no response from them except for one. If it's for a job that ended up not being great fits. But to me, it shows initiative, and a lot of employers do like that kind of initiative, depending on the role in the industry, of course. But I would not reach out and try to connect to LinkedIn with people who you're about to interview with, because that puts an odd pressure on them. So definitely don't do that. But cold emails to introduce yourself, introduce your capabilities, your interest in a company, and so on. I think that's a great first step to initiate conversations.
In relation to that, so you mentioned like don't reach out to the person who's interviewing you, but if you, as GMI is a vast network, if you reached out to a mentor who happened to be at that company and wouldn't be the person interviewing you, would you say that that would be somebody where you could get information from like in preparation to an interview, or would you kind of err on the side of like do your research without trying to get more assistance from somebody in that company, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so if I think I understand the question, if there's a connection that existed prior via mentorship or something, absolutely take advantage of that for sure. If it's a cold call email to a recruiter in a company that you're about to interview with, I wouldn't do it, or even a hiring manager, I wouldn't do it. But if there's some prior connection that exists already, absolutely take advantage of it.
Michelle?
I think one thing I would do just throughout your search, I think this does make me think about, though, I do think generally speaking, asking for informational interviews, if there are companies or types of positions you anticipate you think you're going to want to apply to in the future or that are particular interest to you, that I would probably do. I know like when people have contacted me for informational interviews, I'm happy to do that. And I think that's a way to potentially learn more about a company culture and types of roles before you might get into a situation like Peter's saying, where you may be questioning, ooh, do I want to do this? But I do yeah, I do think typically for me, if I am applying at a company, if I'm in the middle of the interview process, I will potentially reach out to folks I already know at a company. But it is true. I don't typically reach out to people I'm going to be interviewing with directly before the interview.
We received a clarifying question for you, Peter. Did you say that it's advisable to follow up when to expect feedback after the interview? And if so, won't this seem as if one is preempting a rejection?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? I didn't quite get it.
Um, is it, did you say that it's advisable to follow up on when to expect feedback after the interview? And if so, won't this seem as if one is preempting a rejection?
It could be preempting a rejection, or you could preempting an offer or a second interview. So you won't know until you ask the question. To me, getting next steps means that you're interested in the role. Employers will recognize that for sure. As far as timelines go, a lot of employers understand that you as an interviewee are also interviewing with other companies, and you may be taken off the market at some point. So employers want to know that for sure, that you're interested in the role, and establish timelines on both sides. So yeah, I would definitely do that.
We have two more questions being typed at the moment. But is there anything else that either of you would like to share on the topic of rejection while we wait for those questions?
Michelle?
I think I know we've hit it before, but I think I would just keep saying that don't let it stop you. Don't let it demotivate you, because it happens to everybody.
Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I was reminded of I don't know if you guys heard of Aesop's fables before, but a fox had heard about the big beast lion, and he was scared to death of that lion. The first time he saw a lion, he was scared, almost ran away. The second time he saw the lion, he wasn't as scared, but still a little frightened. The third time he saw him, he struck up the nerve to make a chat with the lion. So what does that mean? It means that familiarity breeds confidence. So if you get rejected several times, just brush it off. Don't take it personally, and keep moving forward. There's nothing holding you back except maybe your impressions of what an employer may have been thinking about you, why you got rejected, these kind of things. From a pragmatic point of view, it's useful to understand why a rejection occurred if you can get that feedback. If not, move forward.
I also feel like I would
okay.
rather apply and get rejected than not apply and always wonder, could I have gotten that interview or could I have gotten that job?
100%, 100%.
A new question. How should I approach a situation where my skills and experience closely match the job requirements, but I still face rejection?
I think
That's a good
that's
one.
unfortunately going to happen. I know that's happened to myself as well too. And I think in tight markets or just anytime there's going to be companies or positions where there's a lot of applicants, I think unfortunately that will happen. But again, it is not a reflection on your abilities or your skills. And I think that's when you just have to not let it stop motivating you and keep applying for the next one.
Exactly. Yeah, I would second that, Michelle. And I would also add that a lot of applicants are applying to that same job. And they may have one edge over you that you didn't have, or there might have been a personality thing that might have been at play. There's all kinds of reasons, but speculating what those reasons are, I mean, even though you're matched, you didn't get it, that means that there's probably a lot of tight applicants in there and they had to make a decision. So when you go to a restaurant, for example, all the fish and steak both look really good. How do you make a choice? Well, it depends on the situation at the time. So yeah, again, don't take that personally, and keep applying jobs that you're fit for. Eventually you'll land one for sure.
A new question. How do I ask for timelines from the interviewers in the event they do not make it clear during the interview? So more of phrasing. I feel like asking when should I follow up seems rude in a way. Is this a good way of asking for when to expect feedback?
Okay, I'll start this one. Yeah, so don't ask for when you should follow up. You should follow up basically on what the situation dictates. But that's why you put the onus upon them, and you ask what the next steps are and when they expect to make a hiring decision or learn about next steps. And the interview will probably say, "Oh yeah, we'll get back to you in like 3 days, or by the end of the week, or maybe next week, or something like that." And as Michelle said earlier, if that timeline elapses and nothing has happened, then it's a good time to follow up after that.
I would say the same thing. I would say oftentimes, I find if there's a recruiter involved in the process, they're oftentimes communicative about what the process will look like in next steps. And I find that they're often a good resource to ask what the process might look like and what steps to expect. With the hiring managers, if I don't know the steps from a recruiter and I'm ending the interview with the hiring manager, I think at the end of it, there's nothing wrong with reiterating your interest and asking like, oh, is there anything else you'd like to see from me? Or do you have a sense of the timeline on potential next steps? I think those are all very appropriate to ask. And then, as we said, I would listen to what their timeline is. And if that timeline passes, then I think it's very appropriate to follow up.
That's well said, Michelle. Chris, if you don't mind, I want to add to that. To me, in the interview process, we have to act as salespersons. We're selling ourselves. And to me, a salesperson is going to say, hey, for example, is there anything else about this product or service or me that you'd like to learn about? And then from there, you can segue easily onto, okay, great, what are the next steps? So to me, it's a sales process in a lot of ways, and be mindful of that as you apply to positions.
I believe we're getting one more question being typed. Oh, no, just saying thank you. So if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to type them in. Otherwise, I would really like to thank Peter and Michelle for your time. I think getting rejected from job interviews is something that is very prevalent for everyone, not just students. So it's always nice to know that it's not just happening to you, because I think sometimes when you're applying for jobs, it kind of seems like you're in your own bubble, and kind of getting rejected, but it's nice to know in a way that a lot of other people are also dealing with that. So thank you very much for sharing. If either of you have anything else you would like to share, you can. Otherwise, I'll say thank you for that.
I would just say that I think when I look back on my career and the long view, I think oftentimes I did end up where I was supposed to be. And if not for the rejections, some of those rejections, I'm not sure that would have happened in the same way. So again, I think is hard of a part of the job search process as it is. I think once you get used to it and you just realize it's going to happen and realistically more than once, you will find that eventually it's still going to lead you into a great opportunity for you.
Absolutely. I mean, I would definitely tack onto that. Doors closed for other ones to open for sure. And then the second thing I would add is that when job searching, applying to jobs and interviewing and so on, a lot of people act as tacticians, which means they're doing small little actions. But I would also try to get people to zoom out into the big picture. And when you research the company, the culture, where they at in the news, stock prices, these kinds of things. You'd be surprised with one little tidbit may separate you from other qualified candidates because you know more about the company, and that will impress people a lot, and that may leads foreclose some potential rejection. But to me, the key is preparation. So strategize, be a good tactician, but also be a good strategist in your job search.
Great. Thank you very much, both of you. If anybody else has any questions, please feel free to email me and I can get you an answer. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time and I hope you have a great evening.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Nice to meet you, Michelle. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.